Part 1. The Eve of Battle. The autumn chill crept through the canvas of Henri-Patrick Lassan's tent, causing him to pull his woolen blanket tighter around his shoulders. Sleep eluded him, as it often did on the eve of battle. Outside he could hear the soft nickering of horses and the murmured conversations of soldiers on watch. The Crimean night was alive with tension, a restless energy that seemed to pulse through the very earth beneath them. Henri-Patrick sat up, knowing that rest would not come. He lit a small candle and pulled out his father's old pocket watch. The tarnished silver case bore the scars of battles long past, a testament to Richard Sharpe's own martial legacy. As he clicked it open, Henri-Patrick's eyes fell upon the small daguerreotype inside, a portrait of his parents on their farm in Normandy. How far he had come from those peaceful days. With a sigh, he rose and donned his uniform. The fabric, once crisp and pristine, now bore the marks of campaign life, mud stains, loose threads, and the faint discoloration that comes from prolonged exposure to sun and sweat. As he strapped on his father's sword, Henri-Patrick felt its familiar weight, a comfort in these uncertain times. Stepping out into the cool night air, he nodded to the sentries as he made his way through the camp. The 4th Chasseurs d'Afrique's encampment was a hive of activity, even at this late hour. Soldiers huddled around small fires, sharing tobacco and whispered stories. Others tended to their mounts, the horses sensing the nervous energy of their riders. Couldn't sleep either, Lassan? Henri-Patrick turned to see Major François Dumont approaching, a steaming cup of coffee in his hand. Dumont was a veteran of Algeria, his weather-beaten face a map of campaigns past. "No, sir," Henri-Patrick replied. "Too much on my mind, I suppose." Dumont nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Walk with me," he said, gesturing towards the edge of the camp. As they strolled, the major spoke in low tones. "Word from headquarters is that tomorrow will be significant. The Russians are pushing hard, and we need to hold the line at Balaclava." Henri-Patrick's brow furrowed. "Do we have the strength for it, sir? The siege has taken its toll on our men." "It's not just about strength, Lassan," Dumont replied, his voice gravelly. "It's about will. Our allies, the British, they're proud. Sometimes too proud. We may need to be ready to support them, whatever comes." They paused at the camp's perimeter, looking out over the moonlit valley towards the distant Russian positions. The occasional flash of a cannon punctuated the darkness, a reminder that the war never truly slept. "You've done well, Lassan," Dumont said after a moment of silence. "Your father would be proud." Henri-Patrick felt a lump form in his throat. "Thank you, sir. I hope to live up to his legacy." Dumont clapped him on the shoulder. "You're forging your own legacy now, boy. Remember that." With a nod, the major turned and headed back towards his tent, leaving Henri-Patrick alone with his thoughts. As he stood there, the cool breeze carrying the scent of gunpowder and horses, Henri-Patrick's mind wandered to the men under his command. He thought of young Pierre Dubois, barely 18, and already a veteran of several skirmishes, of the grizzled Sergeant Marcel Lefebvre, who had served with Henri-Patrick's father in Spain and now watched over the younger Lassan with a paternal eye. Each face that flitted through his mind carried with it a weight of responsibility. These men looked to him for leadership, for the decisions that would bring them home alive or leave them cold in Crimean soil. The burden of command had never felt heavier. A disturbance near the British camp drew his attention, raised voices carried on the night air, the distinct tones of aristocratic English rising above the general murmur of the encampment. Henri-Patrick frowned, wondering what could cause such a commotion at this hour. Curiosity got the better of him, and he found himself walking towards the source of the noise. As he approached, he recognized the voices of Lord Raglan and Lord Lucan, engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion. "Cannot afford another delay, Lucan," Raglan was saying, his voice tight with frustration. "The Russians are pressing us hard, and we must be prepared to meet them with all our strength." "I understand the urgency, my lord," Lucan replied, his tone carefully measured, "but rushing into action without proper reconnaissance could prove disastrous." Henri-Patrick slowed his pace, not wanting to intrude on what was clearly a private conversation. But as he turned to leave, he nearly collided with another figure emerging from the shadows. "Ah, one of our French allies," the man said, his English accented but clear. "Captain Nolan, at your service." Henri-Patrick straightened, recognizing the name. Captain Louis Nolan was known throughout the Allied camp as one of the most vocal critics of the British leadership's cautious approach to the war. "Captain Henri-Patrick Lassan, 4th Chasseurs d'Afrique," he replied, offering a salute. Nolan's eyes lit up with interest. "Lassan, any relation to Richard Sharpe?" "My father," Henri-Patrick admitted, a mix of pride and awkwardness coloring his voice. "Well, well," Nolan said, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. "It seems martial prowess runs in the family. Tell me, Captain Lassan, what do you make of our current situation?" Henri-Patrick hesitated, aware of the delicate nature of inter-allied relations. "It's complex," he said carefully. "The siege has been long and the men are weary, but their spirit remains strong." Nolan nodded, his expression growing serious. "Spirit is well and good, but it's action we need. The Russians grow bolder by the day, and yet we sit here, letting them dictate the course of this war." He gestured towards the retreating forms of Raglan and Lucan. "Our leaders debate while the enemy prepares. Mark my words, Captain, tomorrow will bring change, one way or another." With that cryptic statement, Nolan bid Henri-Patrick good night and melted back into the darkness of the camp. Left alone once more, the French captain found his unease growing. Nolan's words, combined with the tension he had sensed between the British commanders, painted a troubling picture of the day to come. As he made his way back to his own camp, Henri-Patrick's mind raced with possibilities. What change did Nolan foresee, and how would it affect the 4th Chasseurs d'Afrique? The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten as Henri-Patrick reached his tent. In a few short hours, the camp would come alive with the preparations for battle. Whatever the day might bring, he knew he needed to be ready. Settling onto his cot, Henri-Patrick closed his eyes, his hand resting on the hilt of his father's sword. As sleep finally began to claim him, his last thoughts were of home, of his parents, and of the men who would look to him for leadership when the cannon's roar shattered the dawn. The Battle of Balaclava awaited, and with it, a day that would etch itself into the annals of military history, for better or for worse.